Okay, we are live. Welcome to Reconnected to Life's Community Connects. Tonight we are doing the 4 Seeds of Self-Care meditation and massage, and our special guest is Shelby Woodall from Whole Wellness. Hey, Shelby.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
First, I want to just start by disclaimer saying that nothing that we talk about here is diagnosing any illnesses or should be used to treat anything. Always consult your healthcare practitioner first before taking on any kind of new treatments. Reconnected to Life is all about redefining what it means to be self-centered based on what we call the 4 Seeds of Self-Care, which are sleeping well, eating well, consistent meditation, and consistent exercise. And when we are practicing these 4 things consistently, we inevitably make it so that we are easier able to accomplish our goals, foster more meaningful relationships, and better connect with our community. So in the Community Connect series, we always want to highlight someone in the community who's doing a great job at self-care and who really does exemplify how consistent practice to self-care is also what is creating success in our life and happiness in our life, because ultimately that's what it's all about, to be as happy as possible with the short period of time that we get to be on this earth. So again, welcome, Shelby. And I want to start by just reading the bio that you sent to us so that we can get to know you a little better. So Shelby says, in my endeavors toward the pursuit of happiness through a career, I found myself in a wide variety of fields in which I wore many hats, from delivering pizzas to selling, educating on insurance. One thing each experience had in common was that I did not feel valued in my work. When I woke up to this reality of not feeling valued by my work, I realized I equally did not feel valued by myself. With this awakening, I began to slowly infuse mindfulness, community talks, spiritual gatherings and meditations, more diversified exercise, and well-rounded diet into my life in an attempt to give back to the value that I felt I lacked. Eventually, a friend crossed my path with a suggestion: you give amazing hugs. You should touch people for a living. This simple suggestion from the heart helped to guide me into the massage field, where I found yet another incredible healing modality that brings value to my life. Now, in my endeavors toward the pursuit of happiness through a career in massage therapy, I find myself consistently recognizing the healing potentials in self and in individuals. I strive to invite a self-navigation process that aids in realigning our whole system, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, towards a balanced day in hopes of promoting higher quality self-worth in each of us. I am blessed to find that the value in my life comes from knowing the value I can highlight for you. And just reading that let me know that we had the right person on here. And the first thing that stood out from that was how inherent it is, the 4 Seeds of Self-Care. When we sit still and listen to ourselves, we already know what we need to do. You rattled them all off: eating well, sleeping well, meditation, and exercise. That was the catalyst for the change in your life. So do you want to talk more about that, and then tell us about your practice and what you offer in your practice?
It was a very odd transition for me, I will say. It took a kind of a big leap of faith in a love of a city that actually even drew me into a mindset to realize, oh, I can access calmness through meditation and communities. It really, I don't want to be too vast, but I guess what I'm trying to say in that is, for me, stepping into the 4 seeds of what it self-care, woo. Okay, I'm gonna start over. Hey, I'm Shelby.
Hey, Shelby.
Hey, and so I'm just so thankful how you introduced it, because to me, it has been a journey to get to the point to where I feel strong, and a sense of what it means to me to be calm. And even again, I found meditations and eating well when I was pushed to an extreme moment in my life. It's when my last job was an insurance agent, and I hated it, and made a lot of money. But emotionally and spiritually was non-existent, and it was painful, feeling not feeling. Um, and in that respect, being in a different city at that time, away from my family, I I had to find a way to be connected. Uh, and in me, it was interesting how being pushed to that extreme of being away from my family, being in a job that I hated, um, really called on community. And I want to, again, with the community, to me, that piece is huge, because even being curious about the community I was in, which was Flagstaff, Arizona, there was a lot of open style thinking. There's people, there's cults, there's like, there's so many types of groups that meet around different ideas and get together and have focuses for different releases or just feeling good. And I sifted through a lot of that. And stuff got weird sometimes. And in that, I just want to express that it it's very human, and what I've come to find, to take that time to allow the sifting, because you don't know, there's no right or wrong. And that's one thing about all else that I learned with getting involved in meditation and knowing what that means to me. And slowly but surely, even kind of following that stream of thought, like there's not a right or wrong, and it's all about getting to a place where I feel not just okay, but nourished, and accepted, and wanting to move towards what I believe in, and whatever that may be. And in that, again, it pretty much unravels from there. I'm a storyteller, and so I would say that just speaking to light on one of those aspects was big for me, because the meditation piece, and what I found through, even again, no matter what the theme was in which I met with these meditation groups, the simply meeting of the community was what brought a sense of whole, and knowing that we're all in this thing, moving and grooving, and there's no right way, and that things will continue to ever unfold. And to have that support is everything. And whether it's your family or whether it's your community, if literally your neighborhood or your friends, that in itself, the belief in each other behind a focused idea, is everything. And yes, I don't know. I feel like I'm ranting.
I love that, especially with our self-centered women group that's coming up, because it's like you said, everyone has their own path. Everyone is going to sift different things, but ultimately, having that community with whatever it is that you decide to do. It's just like, if you want to be a writer, you hang around writers. If you want to be proficient in your self-care, then you hang around a group of people that really have that ultimate goal in mind. And so I love how, you shared the different ways that you sifted through until ultimately things started to fall in place for what worked for you. So tell us about your practice and what do you offer there? And how is the nervous system related to all of this, including as it relates to meditation as self-care?
So I'm a massage therapist, and to me, this is a very exciting phase, because I've never imagined I would be in such a field. I've always had a business mindset where I would say, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to create something that's functional for business. And here I am, massage. I'm like, oh, it's also a business. But equally serving this side of me that I had kind of had lost for a moment. And then with that community aspect, again, came back to and said, oh, here I am. And in that, just that is my work, I would say. Simply like that. Here I am. because to me, I feel it's vital to invite people to that sort of self-navigation where it's safe and open and everything can be sifted, and it's not a matter of, oh, don't do that, or maybe this is wrong. It's more of just, let it unfold. And a lot of my showing up to give and even receive massage is to have that intention. And that to me is like everything. And that is also where I speak largely with the community, because I feel like just simply being with others and having that exchange of sharing and receiving and just back and forth has shown me that there is no, there aren't right or wrongs, in the way that when you're going inward to be honestly asking what it takes to bring a sense of wellness all around, it is a wild flame. And I welcome really most of what will come through for individuals. And I like to invite that sense in my work to just enhance the idea of we are empowered. And there was other questions and I forgot to them.
Well, just about the nervous system itself and how it relates to meditation as one of the 4 seeds.
Yes, thank you. And so I eagerly have been approaching the nervous system more and more in my practice, because it's apparent to me, even when you believe you're ready, you say, okay, I'm ready to relax. Let's relax. Sometimes our nervous system has been functioning in a sympathetic way, where our nervous system, the central nervous system, we have a parasympathetic system, we have a sympathetic nervous system. And sympathetic nervous system is when we're in fight or flight and we're heightened, everything's high alert, we're sensitive to like all sounds, we're sensitive, hypersensitivity is a good way to see it. And when we get to that state, hello? Sorry, I had a notice from Zoom. And so the nervous system, when we get to that state of the sympathetic, where we are just jazzed beyond measure and it's stayed there for a large period. Another thing to consider, parasympathetic, sympathetic is a seesaw. So when sympathetic is heightened, our nerves we don't have the ability to be calm. And so in that way, when you can address and say, oh, like maybe I'm on high alert right now, and even just in your mind frame, knowing that fact allows for you to take on that physical awareness to be like, okay, like sit down, sit down, breathe, and watch your heart rate drop. That in itself, I've been learning, is a huge part of what it takes to even facilitate healing at all, is allowing that space to for the body to recognize the differences, and knowing that we have the ability in our minds as well as our physical bodies, like doing massage. I mean, and even like when you can imagine through receiving, it's a passive relaxation technique. So a lot of times I don't want to call it easy, because for some, again, speaking to the sympathetic, if they've been on high alert all day and then come and try to lay down, it doesn't matter what you do to them. It's on high alert. They're not going. Their mind is continuing forward. And in that way, there's very key things to address, where it's like continuing to drop that heart rate and engage the mind to understand it's switching off the side that doesn't serve in that moment, which is overactive, overstimulated. And it's quite the process. There's tricks you can do to force the parasympathetic. Again, it comes down to breathing and taking that moment to slow down. But a lot of it, I found, all of it comes through the mind. And so
explain the parasympathetic or the sympathetic, and then the parasympathetic acts as what?
The parasympathetic is the state in which your blood pressure is low, your heart rate is slow, and easy breathing.
Chinda and I spoke more than once on the topic of 4 seeds of self-care and stress management. And so a couple of things that came to mind. One thing was that we talk about how in our society, we're in this constant state of heightened awareness, in a constant state of fight or flight that we were never meant to be in. but our society that we live in and the fast pace and the quick everything right now has created this in us. And also, I think why people are having such a hard time being in quarantine, being still, switching over. So that's interesting. The other thing I wanted to say, and Kinda, when she was in the bio about somebody told her she gives great hugs, the other part of stress management that we talk about in the workshop is just the power of a hug to create that and to drop that down. And we told the story of Temple Grandin. Do you know her? She was autistic. And
Oh, I do. The cow. Yes. With pressure. Yes.
yes, isn't that amazing that they went into slaughter more relaxed, and then the meat was more tender. And so hugs, you know, that it's not talked about enough, just the power of touch. And I also think that's why people are struggling so much. We can't do that like we normally would, even with friends, even with Kinda. Kinda hasn't even held my baby. I might have given her one hug in I don't even know how many months, and that's not natural. That's not the way we normally behave with each other. So that's a hardship on everyone. So, Kinda, I'll let you go from here. Go ahead and
Okay, yes. I know, all the air hugs. Air hugs are
yeah,
not nearly the same. Yeah. I feel like we kind of need to give ourselves a big old like self hug.
yeah,
Like as part of our self-care,
yeah.
you know? So you said so much, and I just want to backtrack for a minute to share that I actually met Shelby at in the community where I was teaching swim lessons at one of the subdivisions, and the farmers market. Lee Harvey from Fat Iguana Farmers Market was at the subdivision, and Shelby and I met by chance, I'll say, but it was like perfect. I was like immediately drawn to her. So the whole thing about somebody saying like, oh, you should touch people for a living because your hugs like were amazing. And I just felt like, yeah, just like your energy, your personality is just very inviting. And so I was really grateful that we ran into each other at the farmer's market, and that was really awesome that we've been able to forge a friendship and relationship from that. So yay. Yeah, so one of the things you said earlier on, you said the word nourish. And that just really struck a chord with me because that's what self-care is all about. It's about feeding yourself to grow. And that's, so that's one of the things that you touched on. So I'm just curious, you know, your own personal self-care, what does that look like? What would you like to share with people about what your own personal self-care looks like?
Yes. So for me, it's really a variety. I kind of leave it, movement is a lot for me around my self-care. And when I say movement, it's kind of back to that like diversified exercise. A lot of times I have excessive energy. So I find one of the easiest things for me to just step into is actually just dance. And so for me, I'm always inviting that element of whatever space that you find within that you're wanting to give expression through. And so for self-care in that sense, it's like finding that time to do what I love, especially in movement, to exercise my energy, because I'm like, woo, I'm like a lightning bolt, like just when I wake up. And so it's really takes a lot to keep moving. And I'm thankful for massage in that way too, because for me, that's fortunately, I get mutually nourished in my sessions because it's something I'm on my feet. I'm able to be completely physical and I'm holding my core. A lot of my work is focusing on having a balanced energy so that the transfer is very clear and it's very obvious what we're facilitating. And in that way too, that's exercise. I believe that's energetic exercise. And so for me, that's also self-care, that kind of practicing mindfulness which again speaks to the meditation piece, because that's huge. It's like a constant every turn. I'm like, how is this for you? And it's like from massage school, one of the things we went over a lot was, I observe, I imagine. And so in that way, it's a constant process. And that way with self-care, and even food's a difficult one though, for me, to be frank. I'll just say it like this. I'm a Taurus. I like to eat a lot. Yes. And so ultimately I find myself, especially with sweets, that's a fantastic thing that I get myself into trouble with, because I like OD on it and it's just ridiculous. And so in that way, I always find the nutrition piece is a difficult thing for me, but when I'm able to get some sort of handle on it with just limiting the amount of sugar, or enforcing that I only eat fruits instead of certain like sweet types, I have to really, once I get that going, it's like night and day with the nutrition even. So for me, that's like a constant, like trying to balance that. But to me, it's active. So I'm like, it's good. As long as it's active thought, you're good. Just keep moving towards it. So the nutrition piece is actually huge for me in my life as well. Once I get like the meat and veggies and the right protocols at the right times, I'm like, I feel like a superwoman.
Well, one of the things that Rachel and I always say is we know because we know, not because we know better. So like, I think there's one of those areas, maybe two, that are just a little more of a challenge for us, or that we just all have to contend with. And sugar is a big thing. Mine is not sweet tarts, but dark chocolate. I love some dark chocolate. But shifting, like you said, to the fruits, when you have that, like right now, when we're done here, I'm going to go have a nectarine, because I bought these nectarines the other day, and the smell right now in my kitchen is just like, it's just there. And I'm like, these nectarines smell divine. So
tomorrow's my son's birthday, and we're going to have 3 types of cakes from McIntyre's Bakery, another local fave. I'm going to eat all the cake. That's because I've been spending Monday through Thursday being good with the fruits and vegetables and all of that, so that's my balance. That's how I can deal with it. I'm having cake and ice cream.
I second that.
They've got red velvet cake and carrot cake and the strawberry cake. OMG. To die for. We look for any reason to get a strawberry cake.
I still haven't had the strawberry cake from McIntyre's.
It's fruit, carrot, and strawberry. Okay, go.
Yes. Yes. Well, and to go back to nutrition, I mean, that's the other thing as we talk about is just the awareness. So that sugar is one of your is one of the things that how do I want to say it? It's just a weakness, whatever. Sugar is a big thing for a lot of people. I think for most. So it's that awareness of that. So the other thing that you talked about, the other thing you said was self-navigation. And that was something that I just picked up on also, because that really relates to the 4 C's of self-care and just, really life in general. And going back to what Rachel said earlier, just being able to navigate the times we're in right now. And how is it we can self-navigate through this time? Right now, everybody does have, or I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people do have a heightened, sympathetic system. There's a lot going on right now. And so I think we're all in a heightened session and just changes, having to make new decisions about things that we haven't had to make decisions about before. So I think it's really important for people to be able to self-navigate and also to bring their sympathetic system, their nervous system into alignment so that they can get clarity around what it is they should be doing and how to handle the situation. I think for most people right now, we haven't been alive and had to navigate a global pandemic. So this is new territory, but what do we do with that? I mean, here we are. So what do we do with that? And, you know, so I love the idea of self-massage and meditation and how that connects also, because it can bring awareness. We need this time to bring awareness to what it is we're feeling, and then what to do with that, and how to bring some balance into this time. So can you speak a little bit to that?
I was like, what technique am I going to bring, man? And how you just invited that question just totally triggered the thought of, oh, here we go. So there's, I want to offer that one of the most beautiful things to remember is that no matter where you are, we have the ability to access our parasympathetic state, which is the state that is resting and digesting. And in that way, we can begin with remembering touching ourselves in appropriate manners here. And ultimately, one of the very simple things, even to begin, where I began with energetic work, was coming into contact with your own head and brain, and kind of just like taking that moment. Even now, I'm like, wow, to allow the heat of your hands to meet the heat of your skull, to feel maybe even around the temples, that sort of pulsing that's going on. Remembering that aspect of what it means to be alive in our bodies, and having that conversation even simply starts to engage a lot within the self-navigation. It really, like, you'll notice you're going to become heightened to certain points on your head. You'll notice the temperature will change depending, and even I would say it might even, once this is a curious period, just finding out how the connection feels with your hand to your skull, and then ultimately coming to a resting point and just allowing yourself to sit for a moment. And again, speaking to the finding space, no matter where you are, to look within and know that you're not without what you need. And in that process, that even I'm like, wow, like I can feel my nerves have dropped. It's very excitable to be on this call. And it's obvious to me now my breathing has already shifted. And taking that 5 minutes, 5 minutes will completely change the way your system is operating. And knowing that contact, and that's just a simple, that's not even, palpating, because you could even, and then even further, we could even speak to this one as well, touching on the temples and beginning to slowly rotate. And this one, you're accessing a major bone that goes across your eye structure, and called the sphinx or sphincter. It's not the sphincter. Ignore that. I'm going blank. I know. I swear. Sphenoid. Hey, it's a sphenoid. And and ultimately, just kind of when you slowly engage the tissues, remembering there's stories. There's stories, and all of them are what they are. Whether it's a memory as you work through these tissues that feel sore. I imagine they feel sore. The temples especially can be sensitive. So I always recommend just light pressure while you circulate to it. But even that process alone is within the self-navigating. You dive into the tissue. You dive into sometimes hidden emotion that lives within the tissue. And sometimes memories even come through tissue, because our brain is perceiving for us, but yet is also perceiving through us with our through our through our limbs, through our body, and the tissues laugh. Just like we think memories in our brain tissue, it's in our physical bodies. So recognizing that self-navigation, fun things to notice.
When you
You just,
talked about that, my memory immediately went to my granny, who used to ask me to do this to her, to give her a facial, and this was the thing that she wanted. And so that was,
I love that. You can't plan that. I'm like, that's awesome. I love it.
I
Yeah.
do love that.
and I did immediately feel like my body went down a notch just by that intentional touch.
Intentional touch. Intentional touch.
Yes. I like what you said about the story. You know, you were like, we have stories, and that just made me think of bringing awareness to the story that you're telling yourself in that moment, whatever it is. You know, a lot of times we are caught up in a story and maybe we're not even aware of the story that we're telling ourselves in the moment. And then we get this heightened sense of fear, anxiety for a lot of people, aroused emotion. And so, like, you know, that can be like a touchstone for like, okay, deep breath. And what is the story I'm telling myself right now? That can be a really huge, you know, just eye opener for people right there.
Absolutely.
The other thing was you talked about the breath, and that reminded me of an Eckhart Tolle quote that one mindful breath, one mindful inhale or one mindful exhale is a meditation in itself. And so, you know, it's just that awareness of we like, we're not aware a lot of times of like how we breathe so shallow and just the tension that we're holding. And so that breath brings awareness to, you know, sometimes that the tension, and that, you know, it's like, oh, okay, you know, let me take a deep breath and open up and get the blood flowing and the oxygen and all of that. And, you know, so that reminded me of that.
Awesome.
I wanted to ask you, Shelby, because I think this can relate to lots of parents and their children, the conversation that we had about going back even further to your childhood, and what started shaping where you are today, specifically with your anger.
Yes. So it's so,
Lots of kids that are angry right now.
yeah, absolutely. And I am eager to talk on this specifically. My childhood was riddled with anger, rage, misplaced rage, and displacement. A lot of times I would find myself what I would call red vision. And if something didn't go away, I perceived it to need to be, or whatever the case, I would quickly revert to this emotion of just not okay. Things were not okay, and I had to show it. And so a lot of times in that way, I would experience like breaking items. Luckily not people, so hey, there you go. But ultimately, that was a lot of my childhood. My mother was smart enough to realize, oh, let's get her into some anger management. But even in that sense, I was one of the children who was like, no, thank you. I'm like, oh, I've come to play rummy and I will only tell you X, Y, and Z. Have a nice day. And so for me, that process was odd in itself, because even the counselors I went to, I was still in a state of not willing to be in the open. And what I've come to find in my life was that each time as I grew, teenager even, I would meet this to be like, you know, not open towards what's the point of holding on to a feeling? And I guess not even as much as that, is it's like this light, it just kept happening and pressing me with the emotions of what I believed and perceived and thought to perpetuate. And a lot of what I discovered was that emotions are temporary. And it's really important to offer space to that process, and not try to come in and tell it what to do, or not try to come in and name it, to just so you can like put it on a shelf. It's something that is fluid. Emotion is fluid and temporary in that way that it's fluid. And as I've grown, and especially towards, again, that big leap that I took when I moved out of my hometown into a different city where all I knew was one person, which thank God I knew one person. But ultimately, as I grew the community out there, I just felt like I had been ripped open so many times. It's just like, what emotion is left? And again, it's just like the unfolding of life. And within it, I kept finding there's nothing really worth holding on to, especially around rage. And it ultimately allows for what you want to actually come forward when we process through the emotion and with it, instead of trying to like place it, be freaked out, or like just keep it in a cage. It's something, and I think in that way, I like to invite, from a child perspective, for parents to even consider this, that, just like, you know, someone may experience rage while they're driving all of a sudden because somebody was all of a sudden inconsiderate. Equally, that feeling drives through children for all kinds of reasons, and it's temporary. And we can't highlight it or over focus, because in that way, it just perpetuates things that are, I don't want to say that aren't productive, around the emotion that's unfolding. And not always. I think it's also good. I mean, obviously, I haven't had children yet. So I would make that a point. But I think it's just important to realize that the way emotions come undone, it really is vital to offer that space for the growing process. Because that, above all, is what I've been finding. It just completely transforms different aspects. Even when I stepped into the massage field and stepped into energetic techniques, that was when I even further, I think when I became more conscious and had a more of a ongoing conversation about the emotions that were moving through me, was through polarity therapy, which is an energetic technique that I practiced and that I was receiving at massage school. And that was eye-opening, because it's one of those things, you give space, and you're called to lay on a table, you're called to completely clear the mind, and then allow somebody to do very interesting and very different techniques that would be considered far out, but once you understand a lot more of the system, different things make sense. But ultimately, when you don't know anything and you're just like getting touched, quite the experience, because again, memories through the tissues, things just flood out. And with my first energetic session, again, I believe that was the first time I became really conscious about working with old emotions and working through. And it just came up over and over again about rage, that there's nothing worth holding on to. And especially around that type of emotion, and whether it's resentment, and even, from whether it's child to parent, the parent to the child, in that respect as well. It's just like, let it go. It's like emotion is temporary, and to know the bottom line that we all want to be loved and be seen. And that's a lot of what I discovered through the energetic work as well. And even remembering that knowingness, it brings that space to that process that looks all kinds of ways. And I do, I will even speak to this too. I have a lot of autistic people in my life, whether it is people who have like sensory disorders, or people who are like far spectrum Asperger's, where they like, it's like a social, like they are just like combative immediately with like knowledge, like in most aspects. And I've even realized with those individuals, whether your child has something they're working with like this or not, that feeling of like frustration is so common. And again, I'm even in my own life, I'm curious. I'm like, maybe it's the way we're infusing quickly into technology without recognizing how our systems are taking it on. But maybe it's the way, there's a lot of curious notes in that for me. But around it, I just will say that I think it's vital to remember to give space, because things are changing all the time, and know that even though it doesn't make sense and they're outlashing, take it personal. And that's the biggest thing too, is like, don't take it personal and give space. Because children, I believe through the body work I've seen, even through the delving of myself, who was like raged out. Like I seriously had red vision, you guys. Like my mom was like, oh, she might be the spawn of Satan. We don't know, but we love her. And so that was my childhood. And this is just, silly but true. I mean, there was odd experiences I had to go through in my childhood that were ridiculous, aggressive, scary, just evil. I mean, in the sense of like, why would you do that? And so it's, again, that holding space. Above all, my mom has always been that as well, like ever loving and ever re-inviting to say, look, that happens. I love you. And in that way too, I think I'm blessed to have that invitation, because through my body work, again, asking that question, what the heck is this? Why? It's like, you just want love, man. It's like, let it go. And that's usually, for me, that had been a lot of the bottom line. And through body work and touching others, I perceived a similar tone through bodies. There's just like, people really just want to be seen and allowed that space to just be in the moment, whatever that may be, and moving through. And then remembering to move it. That's been fun too. That's when it became conscious for me. I'm like, oh, my rage, it moves. I'm like, I don't have to like, It's like, I'm like, I'm gonna paint this picture because it should be red. It's like,
Well, I think the really important thing that you hit on a couple of times was allowing the space for the emotions so that it can go through you and so that we don't hold on to it. And I think generally kids are pretty good about allowing emotion to go through and not hold on to it until they learn like, oh, like that's not right. And you can't do that, or you can't say that. And then that's when they start to hold on to emotion. And then I think, and I'll speak personally, that as an adult, that's when adults start to hold on to emotion instead of allowing the emotion to go through. And as you said, holding space for those emotions and just letting them be so that they can pass through. Then we tend to then hold on to them and stuff them down. And so that's what, causes a lot of problems as we move through life, and we hold on to those things rather than giving them space and allowing them to just be so that they can move through us. So I think that was really good. Did you have something, Rachel, you want to say about that?
I just had a couple of observations before you talk about what we have coming up next and do the meditation. And that is, first I want to say that I was able to get a massage by Shelby recently, and there was a definite difference in the way that I was touched versus other massages, in a very intentional way, even from the way that you put the oil on was something that was really calming to me and felt very loving to me, and that meant a lot. And also in your bio, I love how you said that you're realizing that what you do is serving other people. Let me just look really quick to say exactly how you said it, because it really does hit on a main point. And it's like, I am blessed to find that the value in my life comes from knowing the value I can highlight for you. And that's really what we're all doing here, is who said in the end, we're all just walking each other home. That our biggest purpose is to find out what our gifts are and then to share them with others, which is the reason we do these workshops and retreats and the Self-Centered Women Group, because we want to facilitate space for people to process their emotions and cultivate what comes up from that, so that they aren't insurance salesmen if they want to be massage therapists, because that won't work. They can't be sharing their gifts with others if they're ultimately not happy with what they're doing at their core. And self-care is vital to figuring that out. What is at my core? We don't know until we take care of ourselves first, so that we can create that space to start letting that stuff flow through. So thank you for all that you do and all that you stand for, because it just reiterates all that we do and all that we stand for, and that we're all on the right track.
Yes. And I will say that I also had a massage with Shelby, as did my daughter, and it definitely very healing, very intuitive for you. I could tell you were very present with, with me, and it was apparent, and it was really awesome, especially because I think that physical touch is so important, and so it was, like the energy of it was just really amazing, and it was very healing for me. So thank you for that. I want to ask you, what do you have coming up? What upcoming events do you have? What would you like to share with our viewers?
So I'm pretty excited about this one. It's still in the works, and I'm working with a clinical nutritionist named Caitlin, and she is actually going to come in and host a free intro class to immunity tips, and just touch on that at this time, just to kind of help with the mind frame, as well as just supporting our systems. So that would be cool. We don't have any, that's in the works, so I'll have details on my social media eventually.
That's
Do you
great.
have social media that you want to share?
Yes. Right now I'm on Instagram as Whole Wellness Smyrna. And I think it's the same for Facebook. So if you search me on Facebook as Whole Wellness Smyrna, you'll find me that way too. And those are the best modes to find me.
And obviously you are right here in Smyrna for those that are interested in a massage. So yes, conveniently located here in Smyrna. Is there anything that you didn't touch on that you wanted to touch on with regard to self-massage? Anything we didn't ask you that we should have?
I think everything has been amazing. I want to, for myself, I'm like, and if you'd like to book a massage, you can call me or text me is the best way for first timers. There's a lot I'm doing with COVID in mind. And so I like to invite that as well, that it's ongoing, the virus situation. And to me, I'm one who's keeping my finger on the pulse. And it's very important to me to assess each of our risks upon going to receive massage, because it's a high risk situation. And so I like to highlight that in the way that I'm mindful about that aspect, and it matters. And
careful.
Yes, and yes, if you'd like to book a massage for first timers, I'll ask that you call or text me, which is 770-369-8991.
Good job.
Thank you.
All right, so I would like to share with everybody the upcoming events that Reconnected to Life has. First of all, coming up here in 2 weeks, we have our next Self-Centered Women group that begins on July 26th at 8 p.m. That's online, so you can be anywhere and from the comfort of your home. Sign on. Self-Centered Women is a year-long journey that is dedicated to diving deeper into self-care practices, the 4 seeds of self-care, and the self-care practices that support you and your journey. And, as Rachel said in the beginning, when we consistently practice the 4 seeds of self-care, we are able to accomplish our personal goals, foster more meaningful relationships, and reconnect with our community. And I think all of those things, they've always been important, but I just, again, feel like right now it's more important than ever. With everything that we're all facing right now, it's more important than ever that we really concentrate on our self-care so that we can show up for ourselves and for the people in our family and for our communities, because it's really needed. So that's Self-Centered Women. I'm excited about that. Then we have our workshop with Beyond that's going to be at Beyond on August 16th from 1 to 3. That's a Sunday. So that will be coming up August 16th, and that's going to be a journaling workshop. So that is another event that we would love for you guys to join us. We will post all of this on our website and social media as well. And then in September, we have our Reconnect retreat. That'll be in Canton. That's a day-long retreat. It's on a Friday, September 18th. And once again, dive into the 4 Seeds of Self-Care. So spend the whole day really working on all the aspects of self-care, eating well, moving our bodies, journaling, and really just kind of diving deep and kind of uncovering those things that are holding us back, so that we can move forward in our self-care practices. And the other thing I'm very excited about is our 30-day challenge, our 30-day self-care challenge. That's going to start on August 1st. And we're going to dedicate 1 week for each of the 4 seeds of self-care. And what we will do is we're going to offer a tip, some inspiration, and a journal prompt around each of those 4 seeds, so that you can really create those habits. Because as we know, when we create those habits, that's when we're really able to consistently care for ourselves in all of those aspects that we know are all connected to our better health and well-being. So a full week on nutrition, sleep, meditation, and exercise. And I think you guys are going to get a lot out of that. Rachel, do you want to say anything about the 30-day challenge?
No, I'm just excited to do it.
Yeah, me too. That's going to be awesome. Did I forget anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. So we are going to wrap up with a very brief meditation, a 2-minute meditation. Just so I would like to invite everybody to take this time for yourself, give this gift to yourself, and just very simply close your eyes and get comfortable. Take a nice deep breath, and I am going to ring a bell here for the start. And again, I just invite you to take some nice deep breaths, and really bring some awareness to your body, to your breath. Are you holding tension? See if you can release that tension and breathe in and breathe out. So I will ring a bell when we are finished, and then invite you to open your eyes. So for now, go ahead and close your eyes and take a nice deep breath. And I just invite you to take one more nice deep breath. Inhale. And just exhale and just open up space and allow and just release any tension, any stress. And that is it. That's it, y'all. A meditation can be that simple. So for anybody who doesn't regularly meditate or is intimidated by, meditation and what that is, it can be really very simple. It's just allowing that breath and just that awareness in that space. And that is it.
Awesome. Thank you, Shelby.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you too. I'm so happy we got to meet on that fateful day, Kenda, and so cool that I got to be a part of your solstice retreat. You guys, those workshops are awesome. And I will be there at some point again because I need to attend. I love the whole concept. So I appreciate you guys both. Thank you so much for this. This is awesome.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.